Okay, my name's Steve LaPraim. I'm a candidate for Senate District 42 as a Republican. I'm a conservative first and a Republican second, and I'm here today with David Sanders, who's running for Public Service Commission. Dave, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you, Steve. My name is David Sanders. I am a candidate for Public Service Commission District 5. I am a fourth-generation Montanan, a third-generation U.S. Army veteran, and a former commissioner or some former executive director of the Public Service Commission. So I'm happy to be here with you today. I consider you both a good friend and an excellent candidate for the state Senate. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is awesome. The PSC is, it's a little bit of a mystery to the public, it seems like. There's a lot of press about PSC. There's a lot of information that's out there or misinformation that's I'm not sure a lot of people know what the PSC really does.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the case, and especially in recent months. I left the PSC in January of 2025, early January, and it wasn't too long after that the PSC went from being was considered an exemplary state agency charged with regulating 7 different very important monopoly industries in the state. And it devolved from that into a literal political food fight among 5 different commissioners who couldn't get along and couldn't stay focused on the mission of the Public Service Commission. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to run. In fact, the principal reason why I decided to run is bring some focus back to the mission of the Public Service Commission, which is protecting Montanans, both their safety, the reliability of the services they get from the various regulated entities, and protecting their wallets, their pocketbooks, in terms of the affordability of those industries.
That's pretty amazing. I've got some notes on my phone here, so I apologize if I'm looking down at this. There's a lot of things that you just put into that sentence. So let's talk about what is the history of the PSC. What is the original charge, if you will? What's the original charter of the PSC? What was it designed for?
Well, that's a great question, and one of the things that I think is most important about the transition, because there was originally sort of a railroad commission. As you know, the railroad's a very important part of the state of Montana's history, and it's been an economic lifeline for Montanans, and it still is to this day. Because we have 3,860 miles of railroad track in this state, and literally thousands and thousands of rail cars moving across Montana. I'm sure every Montanan sees those just about every day, carrying loads of coal and other commodities across the state. But the PSC was originally designed to regulate the railroad because it was such an important lifeline. But the PSC evolved into regulating all monopoly utilities. Not everybody can have a railroad. Railroads, there used to be more competition among the railroads.
Right.
We used to have 2 railroad lines as recently as 2 years ago.
Sure.
But now we just have really Burlington, Northern Santa Fe. There's a small other sort of a small track down in the southern part of the state. But this is really the railroad's a big part of what the PSC does. The PSC does do safety regulation of the railroad in conjunction with the Federal Railroad Administration. So they regulate motive power and electrical for the railroad industry, and also now, after some work that we did when I was there in 2024, we also got the legislature to agree to give us some regulators who monitor and improve the safety of the tracks. But beyond that, the PSC now also provides economic regulation of the electrical power industry, natural gas distribution, natural gas safety regulation of natural gas storage and natural gas distribution within the state, and also telecommunications, small non-municipal water utilities, and also everything from, as I say, electrical power generation to garbage hauling.
Wow.
Which is part of the PSC's purview. So there's a lot there, and there's a lot of work to do, serious work to be done by ostensibly serious people. But unfortunately, it's turned into a food fight and a political shoving match among commissioners vying for power.
Are they fighting? Is the food fight the food they're pulling from the garbage cans that they're supposed to regulate?
It feels like it, because there's a lot of garbage lying around on the floor after they're done on each commission meeting. But on a more serious note, I mean, I think if the commission doesn't get focused on its job again, everyday Montanans are going to be the ones who are hurt, because the affordability of their everyday lives. Everybody gets a power bill every month. Just about everybody gets a natural gas bill almost every month, or just about everybody does. Everybody who has a landline telephone gets that every month. They get a water bill every month. So there's a lot of things that the PSC does, and it needs to do, but it can't exist or do its job well if it's just going to be a bunch of fights among the commissioners about, this person said that person said this. We're gonna try to remove a commissioner and go to the governor to have them suspended from office. And it's just, these people are all elected by the people of Montana. The people of Montana deserve to have proper representation for them on the PSC, and they're not getting it right now.
So the PSC is supposed to protect ratepayers, protect the citizen, the taxpayers, whomever, right? They're supposed to protect them from rate hikes, bad deals. I mean, explain what exactly you're protecting the consumer from.
Well, the biggest part is, as you know, it just regulates the monopoly regulated utilities, the IOU utilities, industry-owned utilities. And so those industry-owned utilities, in this case, are monopolies, many of them.
Right.
And so they're there to sort of substitute for the discipline of the marketplace, if you will. Otherwise, they could charge virtually any rate they wanted to, but they have to submit rates to the Public Service Commission, and then the Public Service Commission is supposed to scrutinize those rates and look at them with an eye towards protecting Montanans. Bear in mind also that particularly, I'll just take electrical power as an example.
Sure.
Electrical power in Montana from these industry-owned utilities is completely owned out of state. The companies that Northwestern Energy, Montana Dakota Utilities, and this proposed merger with Black Hills Corporation, all of those companies none of them, not a single one, is based in Montana.
Yeah.
And so they don't have Montana directors. They have, they're based in either Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in the case of Northwestern Energy, or in the case of Black Hills Corporation in Rapid City, South Dakota, or in the case of Montana Dakota Utilities, they're based in North Dakota. And so none of that is, there's not a Montana component to that. And my view is that the Montana Public Service Commission should be focused on protecting the rights and interests of Montanans. And I don't see that going on right now at a level that it needs to.
No, there's a segue a little bit into this. I put out some questions, and one of my questions is the PSC's website talks about IO utilities as being a monopoly, which is we've just addressed, and that the PSC is supposed to help protect consumers, which this is on their website, by the way.
Right.
And what does that entail? So that's the scrutiny of, hey, is this a good deal, bad deal? So you've answered that. Why is it that MDU, Montana Dakota Utilities, and Northwestern Energy, it seems like they just keep coming back for more? And I'm from this. I've had a part of my life from this industry, and I used to see all this. I know for a fact there's a good part of our power infrastructure, overhead poles, that our power poles for overhead lines, were set in the ground in the 1920s, and they're still standing, by the way.
Right.
A lot of them have oak stubs. A lot of those were holdovers from, what's the railroad that was here years ago, and then it's gone? It's
the Great Northern.
Not the Great Northern, the other one. I can't think of the name. Doesn't matter. These are old rail lines that are falling rail beds and right-of-ways, and there's all that stuff. Why is it, I guess that's the question, why is it that Northwestern and MDU keep coming back? Like, what's the deal? Why does it seem like we keep getting rate after rate after rate, but our infrastructure is very old? I mean, in fact, we have the oldest power grid in the world, I think, the United States does. So I'm not seeing a lot of new. I'm seeing a lot of maintaining the old or maybe milking those assets. Right. I know that power lines leak. So why do they keep coming back for more? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of factors involved in that, Steve, but it's a very incisive question. It's a great question. And the answer is this. Part of it is the way utility rates are built traditionally in the United States. So rates are built not on a return on investment, but rather return on equity. And so when you have a guaranteed return on equity, which is what our Public Service Commission has adopted, is they get like a 9.65% guaranteed return on equity. And so and it varies a little bit from one to another, but that 9.65% return on equity with zero risk, just very close to zero risk, who wouldn't sign up for that deal?
Right.
Right. Every family would sign up for that deal. You're going to invest your money. You're going to not get a 9.65% return on investment with zero risk.
It's a pretty good savings account.
Yeah, it's a pretty good savings account. It's a pretty good federal treasury rate, whatever.
Yeah.
But they get that, and so if your returns are based on a return on equity, what do? You build more equity.
Wow.
You build more equity, so you build more generation. In fact, if anything, if you're a utility in that kind of a deal, you want to be over capacity. So you take whatever your demand is, and you want to overbuild on that. We certainly don't want them to underbuild.
Right.
But gross overbuilding, that's a little bit different. The PSC recently approved a rate for a natural gas plant in Laurel. Now, the natural gas plant is supplying relatively clean energy, especially compared to coal strip or something like that. However, the PSC was originally given an application from Northwest Energy for that plant for pre-approval of the plant. Well, Northwestern withdrew that pre-approval application and instead just went ahead and built the plant. Now, they built it and it was delayed, and there were cost overruns and a whole bunch of things. But if you're cost plus pricing your power grid, then you're going to get cost plus pricing results. Who in their right mind would go ahead and cost plus price anything? So if you just take, this is our cost plus our 9.65%, you're just going to owe us whatever that was. Well, you're not going to do everything you can to control your costs. And so that's what the PSC is supposed to do. They're supposed to control their costs by scrutinizing their costs and then determining which costs are legitimate and which ones are not. The staff found more than $40 million in cost overruns and costs that should not have been approved in the PSC's professional staff, who, by the way, they're economic regulators there, they're accounting regulators at the PSC, outstanding professionals who know their business and do it well when they're allowed to. But we have some commissioners who go ahead and add that pricing back in on behalf of the utility and to the detriment of the rate-paying public. In fact, the commissioner that I'm running against, Ann Bukacek, she actually made a motion to, after all of the money was added back into that rate, which she voted for, she voted to she offered a motion to add an additional $16.3 million into that rate to be put on the back of Montana ratepayers to the benefit of Northwestern Energy for no reason. I mean, there was no evidentiary reason whatsoever to add that money back into that rate. So why would a commissioner do that? Well, the other commissioners couldn't figure out a reason either. And in fact, she couldn't get a second on that motion. Thank goodness. So, you just have these different perspectives. Commissioner Bukacek always wants to support any rate increase. In fact, she supported every rate increase she had the opportunity to support since she's been a member of the commission these last 3.5 years. And she's voted for every single one. And other commissioners are a little bit more judicious, but as a general rule, if you're going to keep granting rate increases and then go to the point where you're offering a motion to increase a rate that nobody thinks is justified, yeah, they're going to come back all the time, year after year after year, to say we want additional rate increases.
So this seems to me, and you correct me if I'm wrong, this seems to be a little extraordinary different than other business platforms or models, right?
Yes.
So let me give
absolutely.
you an example. I decide that I'm going to buy myself a piece of equipment for my business. The business is going to buy a piece of equipment. I'm taking the risk that I'm buying that equipment, and that my hope is and my desire is that if I buy this piece of equipment, it's going to gain me efficiency, and out of that efficiency, I'm going to show better profits.
Right.
Are you saying that these guys decide to build a plant not of their own risk 100%, and that just goes straight to the ratepayer if they decide to build better stuff?
If the PSC doesn't scrutinize it, that's exactly what happens. If they don't scrutinize it sufficiently. So what I'm saying to you is I think there's a different model that would be better for Montana ratepayers. And I think that better model is to actually go to a more performance-based rate-making model. So
Sure.
rather than it just being a cost-plus rate-making model, that it be performance-based. So if you're finding efficiencies, if you're improving the environment, if you're doing all of these various things which are good, if you're modernizing Montana's
absolutely.
electrical infrastructure, if you're making our grid more resilient, more dependable, more efficient,
Sure.
if you're doing those kinds of investments and they prove to sort of pencil out from a rate standpoint, then yes, we should support that and maybe agree to some of those investments.
Sure.
But you can't just have a utility present you a PowerPoint presentation and say we need greater rates because, well, we think we need more capacity for the future. Yes, you might need more capacity for the future, but for what? And that brings us to the data center question.
Yes, the data center question, and that's a big one. And is that where you'd like to go next, is on the data centers?
Well, I think we should talk about it because I think it's on everybody's mind. These data centers are, I agree on, and people ask my position on that. And the answer is, look, everything that comes before the commission, you have to take on a case-by-case basis. You have a responsibility because you're a member of a quasi-judicial body.
Yeah.
So every decision that I will make on a data center or a power plant to support a data center will be based on a couple of different factors. And those are the factual evidence presented, the body of arguments that are presented by each side, not just the rate requester, but also the interveners and other people who have opinion and the public. And then we make a decision based on all of the evidence presented. That's the only fair way to do it. But I will say this. I think that as a general rule, I do agree with President Trump in what he said during the State of the Union address that he just recently delivered to the Congress of the United States. which is that if data centers want to build and they want to place demands on the state's water system, on the state's power system, on the state's whatever, that they have to bring those resources with them, and that they can't just put that burden, the financial burden for those resources, solely on residential ratepayers. It's not fair. It's not good for the economy. It's basically taking people who have nothing to gain from that business and forcing them to subsidize it.
Yeah.
It's no better than any other kind of corporate welfare program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of controversy about data centers. I mean, it's big, and if I never imagined in a million years we'd have this much. To be honest, I've been in the data communications, telecommunications world since 1999. So in my mind, I'm still, 20 years old, and Y2K just happened yesterday, but it didn't. We have to look at the facts of data centers. We have to say, okay, we want data centers to move into Montana, or let's just say they want to move into Montana. Maybe we don't want them here, but let's just say, hey, we want to come to Montana, and we want to build a data center here. What I said last night, because I was at a little candidate forum, was we have the power to set the rules to say this is the conditions in which this could possibly be a possibility.
Right.
And we have to be very vigilant on that. We need absolutely all the facts. Is this our only option? Is this? I mean, we there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of press on it that's negative. There's a lot of press on it that's positive. But we have a unique opportunity here to say, what are the facts? What are the conditions in which you want to bring this in here? What does it mean for us? What does it mean for the gain of good things for our state?
Yeah.
And we can make a pragmatic decision, in my opinion, on how we move forward with that, if that is even something we want to step into.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would say that decision has to be, as you just stated, based on the facts, based on the evidence, based on the arguments presented by the interested parties. And the Public Service Commission has to represent
absolutely
the citizens to protect them from, because none of these data center companies, none of them are really indigenous companies to Montana.
No.
These are large,
huge
information technology corporations that may have a Montana component, and maybe there will be a few Montana jobs that will come about on a temporary basis, at least from the construction of the plant.
Sure.
But then after that, then what? Yeah, data centers, I think, are going to happen, at least in the short run. They're going to need to do that to build out these large places to house all this information technology and the information that flows through it. They will need power. Will need water for cooling. They'll need different pieces of infrastructure. But the company that's going to profit from selling that data storage and data manipulation needs to pay for the power and water and everything else that's attached to that. You can't put that on the residential ratepayers, and the Public Service Commission has it must have a principled and pragmatic approach to dealing with these things so that they don't end up killing Montana ratepayers. I mean, I'm not going to tell a retired veteran who's struggling to make it on their retirement pay, if they have any.
I just heard a story about that last night.
And I'm not going to tell that person, yeah, you're going to pay another $40 a month on your electric bill to pay for Amazon Web Services to have a data center in Cutbank. I'm just not going to do it.
No.
That's not a principled approach. What is more principled is for public service commissioners to stand up for Montanans. If you're a member of the Montana Public Service Commission, you have an absolute responsibility to stand up for Montanans, and that's something we're lacking a little bit right now.
Yeah, and it seems that there are other alternatives. The water thing has really caught a lot of press. I mean, a lot of negative press. And of course, we're a very arid state where our water tables, our water supply is all over the map, depending on drought year, good year, bad year.
Sure.
There's other ways to cool data centers. I've seen it.
Yes.
There's air. We live in a cool environment. There's air. We could build smaller ones. And I'm just throwing this out here.
Yeah.
we have a unique situation in Montana. We have the biggest fiber infrastructure, one of the bigger fiber infrastructures than anywhere. We have a huge backbone going through here. It's funny, in my research for this interview or this conversation, I really started looking into what happened with Montana Power.
Yeah.
The deregulation of power and then the abomination of Touch America.
Yeah.
What a mess. What
absolute disaster.
What a disaster. But there is some infrastructure that's left over that says, hey, you could do smaller units all throughout the state, air-cooled, do this. But I believe that we are in the power position here. Whether elected or not, we are in the power position to say, hey, here's the rules of engagement.
Absolutely. And we should be.
I agree with that.
And the problem is the Public Service Commission, at least heretofore, hasn't been able to set those rules of engagement. And I think we need to have some vision, too. We need to have a vision about what the grid looks like, what data transmission looks like, what data storage looks like in the state, what is going on. We need to be able to determine those rules, determine them in a way that protects Montanans first and foremost, and then after that we can figure out the commercial relationship that needs to take place and so not too different from the commercial relationship that takes place with any business that wants to locate in Montana. Are you planning on building a business that needs to be heavily subsidized by Montanans, or are you building a business that stands on its own 2 feet?
Right. Are you adding value or not? I mean, that's really at the end of the day. What value is being added to the state, to the taxpayer?
Absolutely. Montana, the prosperity and the future economic health of Montana depends on some of these decisions.
It's paramount.
Yes. And we've got commissioners right now that aren't focused on this. They're focused more on attacking each other and scoring political points.
So I brought up the deregulation thing that happened with Northwestern Energies, or not Northwestern, Montana Power Company, MPC. And we made a move to deregulate power to hopefully bring in competitors so we can lower the rates. But we had some of the cheapest rates already in the U.S.
Yes, we did.
Absolutely did. And we had our own, we owned our own generation, power generation. We had our own hydraulics, we had our own plants, we owned it all. And it was a monopoly. Well, it's you can't overbuild so, it's not like some other power company can come overbuild over the existing right-of-way system and have another option, right? So now my guess is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, if another provider comes in, they're leasing the current infrastructure to resell.
Right.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So obviously that backfired. We didn't see a lot. We lost our dams to PP&L.
And then we rebought them.
That's the thing.
And
That's
put
where I'm
that
headed
on the
next.
back of the ratepayers, right?
So then that was a huge mess, right? And then it sounds like we re-regulated. I was just reading through the history, but now we've re-regulated with the purchase back of assets we already owned, and then that just goes back to the ratepayer. So it seems like to me that we went backwards with that. Is that correct?
Oh, it's absolutely correct. In fact, we went so far backwards that it's going to be difficult to recover from it.
And that's my next question.
We gave up so much of our, if you will, political and economic sovereignty.
Exactly.
When we gave that up.
And that was the word I was going to use. This state, seriously, is so rich with resources and capabilities and things that we were in a position where we really didn't need anybody else. Right? So is there a way, in your opinion, is there a way to get back? Is there a way to level? Is there a way to, equalize the pressure? Is there a way to get there to where it's comfortable? Or at least reasonable?
I think there is. We need to have a new way, a new paradigm, if you will, for energy and energy regulation in Montana. We need to have a new way of, there's going to be an opportunity. As you say, much of the electric infrastructure in this state was built in the 1920s and slowly sort of grew out from that. But we still have, I've people who've worked as linemen, and they've told me that they've found insulators and stuff that have date stamps on them. It's like 1924, that sort of thing.
Old Milwaukee was the one that I was talking about.
Yeah.
We have a lot of that infrastructure.
Yeah. And we can't run a 21st century economy, let alone a 22nd century economy, which is what we're going to be facing soon.
Yeah.
With a 20th century, early 20th century electrical infrastructure. I always talk about the time that President Eisenhower, a Republican president, had a vision for a national defense highway system. He thought it was absolutely imperative for American national defense and the American economy to have this national highway system. So the interstate highway system, which we recognize today, and which helps us get across, from one point to another, from Billings to Helena here in 3.5 hours. The state police will be concerned if I say 3 hours, but that's but the highway patrol won't be happy with me. But to get across the state that quickly, it increases our ability to earn and to make money and to become efficient. And so we got bigger and bigger trucks, and it's just things
built
proceed
commerce
naturally that way through commerce, as you say. And the other part of it, though, is that we need to be able to have that kind of infrastructure, which is efficient, which is reliable, which is safe.
Sure.
In our electrical infrastructure, which is resilient, which is defensible, so that we can do that. And I'm not so delusional that I think that there aren't potential adversaries out there that are studying our electrical grid and are looking at it right now as a vulnerability of our economy.
Sure.
And so we've got to be vigilant about that.
Sure.
Today is Vigilante Day in Helena when we're recording this, and the operative term there is vigilance.
Sure.
Those vigilance committees were to protect us from being robbed, but we need to be vigilant about our economy and our electrical infrastructure so that we can protect that and move it forward and modernize it for the future.
Yeah. And I think that as I choose my words here, it sounds like we have let go of some of the maintenance of these things and some of the overdue items, necessary things, needful things to move forward. It seems like we've let some of that go over the years, which is not uncommon. I mean, when you're in business, you use an asset till you can't use it anymore, and that's the way it is, and then you replace the asset, right?
Right.
That's just business 101.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Until it's hurting you or hurting whoever's paying you. So if I have a piece of test equipment and I don't keep it calibrated, and I'm giving customers test results that are defunct because it's no longer calibrated. Well, I'm saving the money on having to pay for the calibration. But in the end,
you're going to lose your customers.
They're not getting an accurate result, right? So it seems like there's been a little bit of that going on. I think part of that is just timing. I think part of that is just, where we were at and where we've advanced. Obviously, there's some heavy expenses there. But the longer we hold off, the more expensive it gets. We see that all the time.
Yes.
So as we move through this and as we're working through these things and as we're really trying to figure out what the crux is, what is the quickest, straightest way that you think in your mind that we get to, at least stopping the hemorrhaging, getting us to a point to where we're just, we're still bailing water out of the boat, but we're not sinking? What do you think that is?
Well, I think part of it is we need to take a comprehensive approach, and that's going to take some leadership.
Yeah.
We haven't had a lot of great leadership on the energy front in Montana or in the nation, for that matter, in my view, until very recently. And I think that it's going to take some leadership on the part of the Public Service Commission. So It's going to require them to sort of get out of the food fight mode and get into the roll up your sleeves and do the serious work of trying to modernize our electrical infrastructure and our electrical regulatory structures. So I plan to be at the forefront of that. I do have some ideas about how to go forward. I think we need to partner with our regional and national partners. As you know, except for Texas, no state operates on an island, and Texas's experiment with operating on an island, particularly after they launched into their big wind energy experiment, turned out to be not so successful.
Yep.
When you get a cold winter like they had in Texas a few years ago, and the turbines stop turning, and there's no power being generated, and you rely too heavily on one source, and you don't have a balanced approach.
Sure.
So I think we need to have a balanced approach to energy. We need to have a bit of an all-of-the-above approach, that there's a place for coal strip generation, at least through the end of the useful life of those plants. There is a place for natural gas generation, not at any price, but at a reasonable price. There is a place certainly for hydro and redevelopment of our hydro resources.
Oh boy! I mean, it's still the strongest power producer outside of nuclear that exists.
It's that kind of base load power that we need, that generates 365 days a year, but you can't generate it efficiently if you're using turbines that came in 1943. So you need to constantly upgrade and modernize that. Looking at wind and solar even. Maybe there'll be additional developments, and there seem to be in some of those kinds of, renewable power generation, so-called renewable, but that have to be done without these huge federal subsidies, which have been inefficient and have distorted the marketplace. So they have to be done on an honest basis in terms of the economics of that, because as we all know, federal subsidies can sometimes just go away in the wink of an eye. And so if you just are left with a heavily subsidized energy source and that subsidy goes away, then you've got problems. And to keep the subsidy going doesn't make any economic sense. So you have to have this balanced approach. And I think Montana is energy rich in all of those areas.
Absolutely.
But we can't keep just killing the golden goose. The golden goose in Montana energy has been the patience of our ratepayers. Because I'll tell you this, Steve, and this is a real concern for me. Electric rates for people in the regulated utilities, the ones that are regulated by the Montana Public Service Commission, those electric rates have gone up by 39% in the last 3 years.
That's a lot of money, man.
That's more than 3 times the rate of inflation.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable.
No.
It's not sustainable for Montana families.
No.
It's certainly not sustainable for retired people who are on fixed incomes, who, if we're not careful, we will be driving those people from their farms and ranches and homes, and we will be driving them to go retire somewhere else where there's a more equitable system of paying for our utilities. And that's what concerns me. I want to protect Montanans from day one to day last, and make sure that their lives, that their fortunes are protected by a public service commission that cares and has a vision for what Montana's future and our future prosperity should be.
That's very powerful. I mean, I think that through all this, the heart of many candidates like yourself. I mean, there's a lot of great people running this go round, and I mean a lot of great people. And I'm always telling people they need to be
You're one of them.
Well, thank you. But I'm excited because it seems like we have historical records of candidates that have filed to run. A lot of them are first timers, but they're all strong business people, men, women. I mean, we're looking at a complete different landscape here. And I think everybody that I'm talking to, and this is the second one of these things that I've done. I'm excited to do it because it's fun, and I think it's great to inform the voters on what it is that their candidates are about. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited about that. And I think
no, you're doing a real service while you're doing this.
Voter education, not meaning how do I go vote, but what are you voting on and who are the people in front of you, I think is number is paramount. And I also believe people understanding what it is that affects their lives is paramount. I think that has to happen. And I think so many people don't know. They just hear some things on the radio. Oh, it's another tax, it's another rate increase. Okay, whatever. I guess I'm just screwed. I talked to a young lady last night, and I say young lady, what a sweetheart. She worked for the state for 35 years. When she retired, and this was some time ago, okay, she had her budget all set up, and she was pretty excited. She was really excited, actually, because she figured she had net $1,000 extra a month in retirement life after all her bills were paid. So, I mean, that's the win, right? You work your tail off for 35 years. You work for the state of Montana. You live the American dream. You retire, you purchase a place, you're sitting there. I'm good for the rest of my life. That's the idea.
Right.
Yes?
Right.
That woman, I mean, I can't even look her in the eye right now. I have zero answers on we have to just keep working our tails off to help her out. She's like, I got $30 extra a month. The only thing that's changed is my lot rent, my power bills, my health insurance, my car insurance. It doesn't sit right with me. It doesn't sit right with you either. I know this. But how do we tell these folks? How do we assure them that we're going to get elected and work our tails off and hopefully help? If we get a reduction in something, is there light at the end of the tunnel for these people? I mean, I can't stand what I heard from that lady last night. I feel so terrible for her. I just wanted to hug her.
Yeah.
And I wish I was a multi-billionaire, because I just say, how about I write you a check?
Right.
I know that's not the answer.
Right.
But
and it's probably something that she wouldn't want or expect. But what we need to do is we need to control these costs to keep Montana affordable. And that's what's not going on. Property taxes going up.
Yeah.
All different kinds of taxes and power rates. When you said $30 a month, well, that's about the average that people's power bills went up in the last year on, if you're a customer of one of these investor-owned utilities. And so, that $30 will disappear in the wink of an eye if we don't elect people who will put Montana ratepayers first. You certainly got to put them at the front of the line. And right now we don't. In fact, I'll tell you this, and this will curl your hair. Earlier this week, on Tuesday of this week, the Montana Public Service Commission met. And there was a natural gas rate increase relating to Northwestern Energy's purchase of Cutbank gas and other small gas utilities in the northwestern part of the state. In my district, actually, Cutbank is in my district. And the Public Service Commission voted to approve an interim rate increase because they didn't have all of the rate increase documents for the full rate increase, but they asked for an interim rate increase so that Northwestern would have a rate increase until they could get their full rate increase, right? So that's what an interim rate increase is. They'll ask for an interim rate increase and get that, and then present the rest of the case for the full rate increase. Well, the Montana Consumer Council is required by law to involve itself and scrutinize all of these rate increases too, and they filed within the deadline to file as an intervener in that rate case. Okay, so they can officially intervene and be a party to the rate case, supposedly to advocate for the Montana consumer. The commission saw that the MCC had filed to intervene within the deadline and went ahead and voted on a 4-1 vote to go ahead and grant the interim rate increase before they'd heard anything from the Montana Consumer Council other than they wanted to intervene. So it's that kind of thinking from the Montana Public Service Commission that has to come to a stop. It's that kind of thinking that favors the big utility over the little defenseless ratepayer, or even the Montana Consumer Council, that has to be brought to an end. And the commissioner that I'm running against is the worst offender of that sort of thing, that bias towards the utility. And I think that I can end that bias towards our big monopoly utilities and bring more balance and protection to the Montana ratepayer. That's why I'm running.
One last question. Is there a scenario that rates drop that exists?
Yes, there is a scenario that rates drop, and that's if you go to performance-based rate making.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to performance-based rate making, you can create a scenario in which rates do go down because you're driving efficiencies into the utilities, which they don't have to have right now because of this cost-plus pricing model that I spoke of earlier.
Okay.
So you need to drive these kinds of more market-based thoughts and more market-based approaches into, monopoly utility is completely different from a utility or any business in a competitive marketplace.
Absolutely is. Yeah.
And so, you need to, and competition has been a great thing in so many aspects of our lives. Look at the space program, as an example. Everything used to be NASA, right?
Yeah.
Everything had to be NASA. And NASA just had a tremendous accomplishment.
They did.
In the Artemis mission, and they sent that around the moon.
Which was neat.
It was neat, but remember, we did that in 1968. We didn't go quite as far, but we did it in 1968. And now NASA's doing it again.
Yeah.
And so, but in the meantime, SpaceX or Blue Origin or any of these private space firms, they've been sending up satellites and all kinds of material for the United States and for the world, for that matter. Starlink satellites and all of this, and making the world a much more efficient place from a space standpoint. If we can bring the principles of competition, if not actual competition, if we can bring the principles of competition to the electric utility industry,
man,
boy, we've got a great future. But if we don't do that and we just continue doing what we've been doing for the last several decades and we just keep doing it over and over again, well, we're going to end up in 50 years in the same situation, only it's going to be a lot worse.
That is the definition of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
It really, truly is.
Absolutely.
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Right. And so I think we've got to have new, fresh voices and faces and minds working our utility regulation issues. I hope to be one of those. I want the voters of the 5th District, if you live anywhere between Helena and Missoula and the points north from both of those cities through Kalispell and Great Falls and in Potomac and Cut Bank and Seeley Lake and all of those places, I'd love to have your vote, and send me some people that I can work with to the legislature. Steve LaPraim is first on my list, running in Senate District 42. Steve, your knowledge of the electrical industry, I think, would make you an outstanding member of the Senate Energy Committee, where they can use some new, fresh ideas, and your experience in this industry would be absolutely invaluable, and you'd be a valued partner for a new generation at the Public Service Commission.
Well, I appreciate that vote of confidence. I love what we're doing here, and I want to get elected, and I would appreciate everybody's vote in Senate District 42. My mom said I came out swinging.
That must have been uncomfortable for her.
Was born swinging, yeah. I've been doing that my whole life, and I'm going to continue to do that. And my desire is to do that for the people of my district and for the state of Montana, including the ratepayers, and working with people like you. I mean, this is why I wanted to set this up. I wanted to hear your mind. I wanted to hear all the things that you had to say. I wanted to see your logic behind it. Now because of modern technology today, the voters get to see that too and hear that, and I think that's super important. So vote for my friend David Sanders in Public Service Commission District 5.
That is
please.
correct.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
thank you, and please vote for my friend Steve LaPraim in Senate District 42.
Well, thanks so much, David. And thank you, Red Quill Red Quill Media, for allowing us to be part of this. And what do we call this? Candidate conversation.
Yeah.
If people don't know, these guys are serving you as well. These people are doing this as well. They're being servants, and their hearts are in the right spots, and this is a great opportunity. So thank you again, Red Quill Media. Big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Hey, thank you, sir.
All the best. Thanks.
Yep.